Hello everybody, and welcome to this discussion on Fire Emblem Three Houses. Quite recently in a Nintendo Direct on February the 13th of this year of 2019, we got a large information blowout on this game, and I'm certain that a lot of my viewers and a lot of Fire Emblem fans throughout the world are curious onto what the opinions and the thoughts of some idiots on the internet are. So, naturally, I have brought a couple friends over to discuss what we think about the information we got from the trailer, and I will have them introduce themselves right now. We will start with a good friend of mine who is probably the biggest fanboy of the greatest master of barbecues of all time in our favorite series.
What's up, guys? It's LinkKing7 here, and as Zerk very kindly noted, I'm an Arvis fanboy. What can I say? It's what my channel's based off of. I do genealogy stuff and some other Fire Emblem stuff, so yeah. Thanks for having me, Zerk.
Yep. And our next fellow is an up-and-coming YouTuber. Currently in Discord, his profile pic is of our new Arden, who we might get into a little later in this discussion. It is Otaks. How about you introduce yourself to the audience there?
Hey kiddos, Greg Chun here. Just kidding. Yeah, what's up? Just ready to break down this Three Heroes thing.
Oh boy. Great start, guys. Great start. All right. So, naturally, I have, of course, assembled the three of us, like the Three Musketeers, to talk about Fire Emblem Three Houses. And I figure that there's nothing better to start with than, of course, the elephant in the room, and that's the fact that we have an avatar as the playable main character again. So, starting off with Section 1, we are going to give our thoughts on Byleth and kind of where we think the direction might go with this, and possibly some of our hopes and concerns. I will let Link King start it out with sort of his thoughts.
Alright, so normally I'm not that big of a fan of having an avatar insert in the game. However, this one did it a little bit differently. So from what we saw in the trailer, it looks like the avatar is non-customizable because they're in specific cutscenes that the game has made. And that leads me to think that while, sure, you get to choose your gender, it does seem like the avatar is a set character within the game. And usually when a character is embedded within the game, then that kind of enhances the plot more so than a self-insert. So I'm kind of feeling okay about this one.
Alright. I think you've raised a good point there with the fact that the avatar is rendered and pre-rendered in cutscenes this time. I mean, I think that should be, like, we have enough technology with, and the fact that a lot of people have pointed out this is probably running off the Warriors engine. There should be some sort of variance in some of the cutscenes to maybe accommodate for different hair colors, but I think beyond that, I think we're really not going to see much customization apart from that, the gender and then the name, really. Otaks, you got anything to weigh in on this?
Well, I honestly like character customization and all that things. Like I did, excuse me, I did like Robin. I did like Corrin, mainly because like you get to kind of put yourself in the game. I mean, I know there's a few out there who don't like that, and there are a few who do like it. I'm one of the the ones who do like self-inserting yourself. It makes you feel like you're part of the story and stuff like that, But I do see that this character does seem to be uncustomizable due to him being already, in cutscenes, and they didn't give him a hood like Robin and well, Corrin didn't really have a hood, and if ever they were in a cutscene, it only showed like the hands and stuff. But yeah, in the cutscenes that we saw from the trailer, Byleth is shown with a face, either a female or male face, and I don't think they would take the time to change based on appearance and stuff.
Yeah, I think that raises a good point. It's interesting as well to me, because my stance with the avatar has been a bit of a rocky one. I was on the Fates I don't like Corrin train reasonably earlier than a lot of other people were, and my main gripe was always that the story felt a little too forgiving of Corrin, and Corrin just didn't feel like he really had a personality core to himself, and he felt integral to the plot, but he didn't feel very compelling. I feel like in trying to make Corrin relatable to a wide berth of players, they just made him a bit too boring for my tastes. And
yeah, that is true. I think that one of the things that might fix, how they approach the whole Avatar thing is if they implemented like the choices matter kind of deal with this, this entry or future entries.
And I think we already starting to see that with the fact that you do get to choose between one of the three houses early on. Now, I have my own theories and opinions as to why that may not matter as much as we might think it does, but certainly for the early game, I feel like choices will be reasonably impactful in that regard. And my big takeaway with Byleth that I really want them is I think an Avatar character can work for Fire Emblem, and I want to stress that removing the Avatar simply because they have a negative effect on the story is not something we should be so cavalier in doing, because the Avatar is a feature that a lot of people really appreciate and really like, and despite the high praise that Echo's got for its story, I've seen plenty of people who still remiss the fact that it didn't have an Avatar, and there are also a lot of people out there who thought that Faye might have sprung out of an earlier idea for an Avatar character living in Ram Village alongside Alm. I don't personally subscribe to that, but I'm glad that it's there for those who like it, and I feel like they should generally take another stab at it, because when I look at something like the Persona series, you can name the main character whatever you want. You don't have to name them Joker, or I forget the name of the protagonist of Persona 4, but you can name them what you want, and you can project yourself onto that character as a result. And I hope that kind of thing is on display with Byleth as well. There is...
So, I agree with you there. I actually think when you want to look at an Avatar character, maybe we don't have to go further than looking at Fire Emblem. For example, New Mystery of the Emblem is one of the games that, despite all the other issues that I have with it, got that Avatar character right. For me personally, it felt like Robin and Corrin were not very impactful on the story. Now, I'm totally fine with having avatars as like a gameplay perspective. I think it's really cool to be able to self-insert yourself into a gameplay perspective, but sometimes the impact on the plot is way too big. And the way New Mystery of the Emblem balanced it had that perfect, you can customize your guy, he's not that integral to the plot, but he's there just enough for you to feel like you're included. So... yeah. It can work. It has worked. And so if they go back to that kind of mechanism, or somewhat of a healthy mix of in between, they can totally pull it off.
Yeah. And a lot of people, I think, hate on Chris because the game sort of strokes him up and down as this great figure. But at the same time, I don't think it's all that intrusive to the story, because Chris doesn't have much of a bearing on the story. So it doesn't matter if the plot essentially sucks his dick, because he at the end of the day, he doesn't really matter to the plot. Whereas with Corrin and the plot revolving around him, with all the characters treating him nicely as well, that does start to impact on the plot, because it kind of ruins the immersion of a character this impactful being universally loved by all the other characters. Just makes very little sense from a worldly standpoint. And I feel like with Chris, a lot of people associate him with Corrin because of how the other characters similarly treat him, but without understanding the structural role each of them plays in the story, really.
Well, yeah, I really do think that in terms of what you're talking about, that we should, that IS or, three houses should make our choices, if ever they implement like if our characters make a big impact on the story, they should make our choices more meaningful, if you know what I mean. Like, for example, if we pick one of the houses, we're only allowed to, stay within that house. I mean, I understand some people would be upset, like, for example, in Birthright and Conquest, like, if you're able to play with characters on Birthright, but you can't play with characters on Conquest, if you choose, based on the choices. And then the middle ground was Awakening, where you can technically recruit almost everyone. I mean, there are a few characters that, you can't recruit because of, to progress the plot. But I think they should lock us, like, once we pick one of the houses, we should be locked into, you know, using only those characters. But it doesn't seem like it, because we did see a cutscene in the trailer where, you know, the main character meets up with the other, you know, two houses, the leaders of the other two houses. So I think that we will have probably access to everyone late or middle game.
Yeah, and I think that's a good segue into sort of our next discussion, which is our thoughts on the setting thus far and kind of the plot hook and how Three Houses presents itself. Considering you weighed in on that, Otaks, I'll let you continue with your thoughts on that kind of thing.
Oh, yeah, sure. Well, it is a definitely different. Like, I was shocked at how different it was from, you know, the mainline FE games, like the other FE games. I mean, this is a mainline FE game, but it's so much different. Like the mechanics and everything that's going on with the story, the plot. Basically, everything seems to be revolving around us. And, you know, since the new Dragon Lolly, who is Sothis, Sothis is actually like only, like it even said in the trailer that only we can see her. So obviously Byleth is going to have a huge role in the story. Whether or not they're going to execute that well, we'll just have to wait and see. But it does seem like a cool premise. I do like the idea that we get to, instead of like training an army, we get to like teach a class. And I think it's going to follow, you know, how Awakening and Fates kind of went with their stories at first, where first we're going to like deal with small issues inside the kingdom. Then we're going to deal with issues, you know, with other kingdoms. And then finally we're just going to fight a god and somehow beat it with our small army of... So I'm curious to see how they pull it off. It does seem kind of cool since we get to role play as a teacher. I mean, you know, it doesn't... Like you said, Corrin had to deal with everyone loving him. Like, that's the whole thing. Like, it all revolved around him, but like everyone was so nice to him. His choices didn't really affect the story too much. I mean, there were some cases where you could be the bad guy. Like you had the option to be the bad guy, but not much. Like, overall you were the good guy. Everyone loved you, and you know, the story was kind of dry. Like, I'll admit that much. As much as I liked Fates, the story was kind of bland with the way it was executed. But with this one here, with Three Houses, I am really curious to see how they pull this whole teacher gig off.
See, my thoughts with the setting is the second that they actually named the continent, I was like, oh my god, yes, this is what I've always wanted, because we still don't have an official name for Fateslandia yet, and that just always disappointed me, because there is so much potential for world building there that they just never capitalized on, and I'm so glad that they have actually thought about, like, just looking at the first two trailers and what they've written on the website, the fact that we have legitimate named factions, we have some degree of what the political landscape in each of the three major nations are, because we have Leicester, who's basically kind of like Lycia, in the sense that it's a bunch of noble houses with no real leading house, Fargus, which is akin to a holy empire, and then the last one, which is Adastria, which is Edelgard's nation, which is a very militant empire, which would typically be sort of the villain nation in Fire Emblem. But here we're seeing it with one of the main good guys, and I'd argue also the most popular lord. And I think, and I really hope with the school setting, my biggest hope is that with the school and with the houses, we get to see a microcosm of that. Like, the fact that these are the children of the nobles. These are people who are raised on the laurels and like the nationalistic values of each of their nations all coming to study together. I want to see squabbles between the three houses in the school. Like, I know this comparison is completely overdone, but I want to see a Gryffindor-Slytherin type rivalry between all three of these. And I want...
But they didn't include a green-colored house.
I know, right?
The ultimate travesty. The ultimate travesty. Fire Emblem 3 Hogwarts, more like Fire Emblem Big Disappointment. I mean,
this is after the expulsion of all the Slytherin students for being evil. They created one school only with Gryffindor, Ravenclaw, and Hufflepuff because they're the good guys.
I mean, Dimitri kind of looks like a Malfoy, so maybe.
Somewhat.
Anyways, I think with the school setting is I want to see that microcosm in play, and I feel like the school setting it's a good setup and it's a good introduction, and I think though. I was talking with Pavis Productions on Twitter, and I said to him, I personally expect that about chapter 15-ish we'll have some sort of big event that will cancel classes, so to speak. And I expect that's when the game will start to be a lot more like a traditional Fire Emblem game, and we'll deal with a war. And I expect, considering how much power the church exerts over Adastria and Fergus, being Edelgard and Dimitri's nations respectively, I expect they are going to have a huge hand in the goings-on. I expect that whoever's leading the church will be our Jeddah/Garnef type figure.
Well, yeah, I remember someone in the Discord pointed out that in one of the cutscenes where the guy's using a fist weapon, the enemies are actually labeled Western Church soldiers. So
yes, exactly, and that's, I think, really important to note. We also get that cutscene where the Pontiff lady is standing next to a green-haired fellow, and we see all those church knights blaring horns, and it looks like they're up on a cliff of some kind, more or less ready to go for war. And that, and we see Edelgard commanding armies, not to mention all that stuff in the first trailer with like the robotic constructs, and then the guy with the crazy whip chain sword, who actually looks a lot like the father character, who is named Geralt, and oddly he looks like Geralt from The Witcher as well, which is just that's a can
cool.
of worms for another day. But I'm not too sold on the school setting personally. I feel like there is a lot of potential there, but I'm going to have to see more before I really say, yes, this is what this game should have been, or if that is the chapter 15 classes are canceled thing, it's like and I find that's way more interesting than the first 15 chapters of school shenanigans, I'll be like, the whole game should have been that. And
let me jump in here. Let me jump in here for a minute, and this might be very controversial, considering we literally just got this and this is pretty much all it focused on, but we're really getting very tunnel visioned on the entire school setting and you being a teacher. Let's zoom out here for a second and look at the actual world map, right? So the game is called Three Houses, and that's literally all they want us to focus on. But if you look at the world map, we've got, sure, our traditional three houses, but then look at the top left corner, we've got an island called Albino. In the top-ish area, we've got something called Threen. It looks like a little country. And then in the top right, we've got Palmyra. Bottom right, we've got Morpheus. Bottom left, we've got Bridget. And so it's not only three houses. It looks like we've got 8 continents. And so for us to be very tunnel visioned in on just the school setting, albeit, yes, that's what they gave us in the trailer, I think is a little bit naive. And I don't know, chapter 15 is interesting, but it depends on how long the game is. Like, how are we going to get to spend time in these 5 regions that are sort of grayed out at the moment that we don't know about? Well, if so, I'd certainly love for us to leave earlier, for sure.
Well, I mean, since the trailer focused on, the whole school setting, I believe they're going to spend quite a long bit of chapters just, focusing on school life and stuff like that. And then I feel they're gonna go from like 0 to 100. Like they're just gonna have us like living peaceful lives in school, taking on these missions against brigands, and then suddenly like, this church is going crazy. I wonder what's going on. They're attacking us, and then we gotta fight some church soldiers, and then we find out like they're being controlled by a god. Like just how we basically like Awakening's plot.
Yeah.
Part of me has to wonder. You have a good point there, but part of me wonders, what if the school setting is something that's continuously there in parallel with the plot?
Well, then
yeah, that's true, because like the classroom I doubt they're gonna get rid of the classroom mechanic like come chapter 15. Maybe they'll move it on to like maybe a barracks type of setting, maybe.
Yeah, but that's what I'm thinking, like a home base sort of thing where you can come and go as you please.
To continue on with the Harry Potter analogy, it would be very similar to what happened more so in the last 2 films, actually, where we see the battle for Hogwarts, and then of course Ron, Harry, and Hermione out searching for the Horcruxes. So like, a friend of mine made a joke that they watched all the Harry Potter movies, and then they're like, "How do we make this Fire Emblem?" Watch the last two, and they're like, "Okay, we'll do that." And I feel like we are going to see some sort of shift in the power balance that's going to bring us out to these other nations. To use a more Fire Emblem-oriented example, I feel like the fact that they're showing us this school right away is because I think it's going to be a big chunk and a big important part of the game. But at the same time, I feel like showing the school setting as like, this is Fire Emblem Three Houses, and given the other trailers we had, would be like if they showed us Fire Emblem 7, but then the entire information blowout was just about Lynn's campaign.
Mm-hmm. That's actually kind of what I feel like. I think there's much more to this than meets the eye, and that we're quite a little bit enamored with the Harry Potter meets Persona kind of atmosphere that it's generated.
Yeah, and while the memes are great, I definitely think there is precedent that there is far more to this game than we actually think. Like, when we think about the last Fire Emblem game on console, being Radiant Dawn, that game is insanely large. It encompasses a full 3 tiers of promotion levels, and it's split into multiple acts, each of which are about 10-12 chapters each, and that game is massive. And that was on the Wii. We have the Switch, which is not only a more powerful piece of hardware, but the fact that it's portable means I think that the chapters are probably going to be, in general, more structured like Awakening, but I think we'll just get more of them as well due to the Switch's better hardware. So I could reasonably see this game being 50 to 60 chapters long, actually.
Oh, no way.
I would love that. And if, like, I have only played like only a few games, but I know from reading lore and, you know, wiki sites and stuff like that, I know some games took place at the same time, and if they could pull off like what Heart Gold and Soul Silver did, where we can go back to like other regions, other, you know, like how in Heart Gold, Soul Silver, the Pokemon games, we start off in Johto and then we could actually go to Kanto. So I'm wondering, like, maybe if we could, like, if this takes place in any of the other times, like in Awakening, or perhaps any of the other games, like we can visit other continents. That would be something to think about. That would be something cool.
Well, one of the areas is called Fargus, and we know who that guy is from Fire Emblem 7, so maybe he founded the nation, who knows?
It's also interesting that the one island nation is named Albino, but I've also heard other people say that it's named Albine, as in Albine Alm Rudolph, which is also reasonably interesting to think. They have, however, said that this game does not, that this game takes place in a world completely separate from any other FE world we have, but I don't think that I don't think that rules out the fact that we might get some Dragon's Gate shenanigans or some sort of crossover DLC. But I think that the main game itself will be reasonably far-reaching, and I feel like all these other nations that are on the map will at least get to visit. Because when you think about Sacred Stones, the war is between Renee, Frelia, and Grotto, but you get to go to Rouston, you get to go to Carcino, you get to go to all these other places and see how they're affected by the war between Frelia, Grotto, and Renee. And you spend a lot of time not in the places where the main on-the-ground conflict is. And I feel like if we get some of that there, if we get some pretty distant and far-reaching field trips, pardon the pun, that I think it will really enrich the game in a lot of ways. And considering that we might be far-reaching and we might be going for around 60 chapters, how do you think the gameplay will work for those 60 chapters? And I am applauding myself for that segue. So yeah, we'll move on to some of our thoughts about the gameplay, and I will turn it over to Link because he played FE4 and he has some opinions on Fire Emblem gameplay, I'm sure.
So, Fire Emblem gameplay in and of itself is relatively standard, but This is interesting because we've seen very little of it in general. Like, most of the trailers, if you look, has been introducing characters, introducing cinematics. We've gotten a little snippet of those, like, horses running over that weird lizard and that special attack that Edelgard did, I think. And then we had the critical hits, which seemed kind of bland to me, but it did seem like they had, like, those one-liners that they usually have, so that was okay. But in terms of gameplay, we really don't know much. From a bird's eye view, just as a quick, like, eye test to me, this game looks very graphically similar to Radiant Dawn, which to me is a big plus.
I preferred Radiant Dawn style to Path of Radiance. Now keep in mind I haven't played Path of Radiance, but I've seen enough gameplay to know what that game looks like and get a feel for its aesthetic. And I prefer Radiant Dawn's look personally. And I feel like this game, running off the Warriors engine, we get that good cell shading that the Switch does really well. But at the same time, a lot of people have been pointing out for the gameplay is that almost all of the units that we've seen thus far, when they were highlighted on the map, have had the Noble class, which I think is reasonably interesting. Because by seeing that the Noble class is all of the units we've seen thus far, and I know a lot of people are going to say that, oh, in the first trailer, Edelgard was labeled as the Aristocrat class. It's interesting that another person on Discord pointed out that they have the same kanji, so it's likely that just in an earlier build of the game, they decided to translate it as Noble instead for this build that we saw in the recent trailer. And they have 4 movement, because when we see that clip of the archer moving in to attack, she only has 4 movement tiles, which is what we see congruent with trainee units in a lot of the older games, especially Sacred Stones and Echoes with the villagers and whatnot. So a lot of people are thinking that a lot of the characters will have classes that they lean towards starting out, but you can actually fully customize your roster as if every person in your army was villagers. And before we see Edelgard promote into a brigand in the trailer, there's like this big menu wheel of like all these different things where it's like you have sword, axe, lance, bow, and then it's like weird things like reason and faith, leadership, and then the movement types of armor, cavalier, and flyer. And I feel like we'll be able to raise our ranks each into different ones. So perhaps if you raise your sword and your lance rank, and then your cavalier rank, you could promote into cavalier. Or if you raise your bow rank and your cavalier rank, you could become a bow cavalier right off the bat. Or even bow armors. And we could see a ton of weird class combinations just starting out, and it could be really fully customizable. And I think that's a really interesting thing to note. It's also something worth noting that in the first trailer we had durability back, which just makes me absolutely happy because it means
hell yes.
Which means silver weapons won't suck anymore, and that's just all I could ever hope for. And of course, the one that people are going crazy about is the fact that we see this one guy. I think his name is Caspar. He's
the fist.
He's like straight up got these gauntlets, and he's just punching.
He's Wolverine.
Hey guys, don't forget Zelgius did it first, okay? If you play Fire Emblem Heroes, Zelgius did it first. He was cool before this happened.
But like it's like I think there is generally a huge aspect of customization to this game that is laying just under the surface, and we see snippets of it in this trailer. I'm really intrigued to see that because as a player of a lot of stat-heavy RPGs like Bloodborne and Dark Souls, I love customizing my builds, and I think that adds a huge amount of replayability. So
I just thought of something though. Like if they're gonna do it like Heroes,
oh god,
where basically no. What I mean is like movement, like certain skills you can't use on certain movement types. Like, wouldn't it be funny if like you could punch someone from the top of a horse? Like I don't know if they're gonna allow that.
Yeah, no,
they
might restrict weapons based on class. I think there might be a precedent for that. Yeah.
But that would still be something, you know, punching someone from the top of a horse.
Yeah.
So.
and because we do see a lot of units using certain weapons, like we see, of course, that gal Petra wielding a sword and having a lot of crit. She'll probably come with her stats sort of leaning towards you want to promote her into a mercenary or a Myrmidon. Whereas
I'll promote her into whatever the hell she wants. She's hot.
she is okay. Okay. Pausing the discussion here. Petra is the best Fire Emblem Three Houses girl, and if you think it's that other gal with the cute hat, you are an invalid human.
Hey, why can't we have both?
You know what? Yeah, actually, you know what?
I'm sorry. I'm on Team Bernadetta over here.
Ooh, that's a rare one. That's a rare one right there.
I mean, like, what, like, since she has like the purple hair and the edgy teenage look, like, what if she could pull off like what Wolf did in Shadow Dragon, where like if you promote him, he gets the purple armor, like he gets the sick purple armor.
I mean, maybe. I mean, Edelgard keeps red when she turns into a brigand, and I'm also glad the brigands don't look like strippers this time, which is nice.
You're right.
I'm sure Otaks is upset because he just wants to get with the students.
Hey,
Van Halen.
we still haven't heard if that's if we haven't gotten an answer to that yet. Like, can we marry the students though?
Van Halen plays in the distance. But
okay, well,
like I wouldn't mind, like, I mean, if they frame it as like this is not a high school, like these are college age kids, and Byleth is only like a year or so older than they are, like, I think it's fine. But if they do frame it a bit weirdly, it is going to be a little whack.
Nah,
It's
you know,
Fire
when
Emblem,
they
it's gonna be
translate
whack
to
no matter
when they
what they
translate
do.
to global, it's always there. Everyone's 18. You know, everyone's 18.
Oh yeah, everyone's 18.
Yep, especially Elise.
Definitely, Elise. Clearly.
Oh, jeez. Well, anyway, back to gameplay. One of my biggest concerns that I'm wondering about is if they're going to take the mechanics from dungeon crawling from Shadows of Valentia into this. You know, like the whole open world kind of type thing. Well, not really open world, but like, you know.
Well, we saw that in the trailer. Like, we saw town exploration, so I think a dungeon exploration would be not too out of possibility, because we also see a lot of footage of places that look like caves and castles. So, like, maybe dungeon exploration does make a return in this game. It may not be as in depth or as often as it perhaps did in Echoes, but I think that there may be precedent for it to return.
Well, that's the thing. Like, I wonder if they're going to keep that. Because, like, if you look at the map, like, if you look at the old Fire Emblem games or the standard traditional Fire Emblem games, when we look at a world map, we have these certain points that are certain chapters, you know?
Yeah.
And I'm not sure if they're going to implement that or if they're going to make it, like, yeah, we're going to have certain areas that we can click into, but then they're going to make it, like, an open exploration kind of thing.
See, I feel like...
Or if we're just going to follow a story or something like that.
I feel like if they do a world map, I'd love it if they don't make all of the world map available to you at once. Like, perhaps at certain junctions in the story, certain areas will be actively locked off to you. Kind of like in Xenoblade, where parts of a certain area that I won't exactly spoil are locked off to you after certain story events happen.
Yeah, I get you. Because the only thing I didn't like about Echoes, and a lot of people complained about it too, is when you are in dungeon crawl mode, like the maps are so small, and and it's kind of like a lot of people didn't like the maps.
Yeah, I like.
Well, then I guess you start to draw this line between: do you want this to be like an RPG or do you want this to be Fire Emblem? It's kind of like, what's your identity, sort of. I mean, we definitely like it to do both very well, but I wonder if they have the capacity to make both excellent.
Yeah, random encounters is not something I think Fire Emblem does particularly well, honestly. And I found myself on the bigger dungeon crawls in Echoes, Thebes Labyrinth and the final dungeon, Duma's Tower, respectively. I would just avoid fighting as much as I could because I found it boring. My team was leveled high enough, and it just wasn't entertaining.
Yeah, same here. Like, I would try to run away as you know, as much as I could from the fights.
Yeah, exactly.
But yeah, well, what about like in battle mechanics? Like, what do you guys think? Like in the map,
we haven't we haven't actually seen much of the formation mechanic, but I'm curious to see how that plays out, actually.
So there's a couple things that are interesting. It's the formation mechanic. There's that special move that had like the horses trampling the lizard. And there's something called arts that I noticed in the first trailer, and it was there in the second one. And they never really touched on that. Now I'm assuming, given school setting, that's something you learn. But how is that going to be? Is it like a skill that's going to consume like magic points or whatever to execute? Is it going to be something that you build up sort of like a meter through battle? I've got a lot of question marks about that. I don't know what you guys think.
I feel like if anything, the wording makes me immediately think of the weapon arts from Echoes. Mm-hmm. Yeah, and that's just where my thought goes to straight away. Like Alm's double lion is perhaps the best example of like I could expect we see a lot of that. We notice in
that was interesting.
In the trailer.
Sorry.
Oh, sorry. No worries. You go on.
I was just going to point out that was interesting that you brought the double line and like the art skills from Echoes, and I don't know if I brought up before, but I haven't played too many of the games, only the handheld ones, and I'm not too sure was the art mechanics like ever used in any of the other Fire Emblem games, or was Echoes the first to use it?
I think Echoes was the first to use it. The only thing really close to the art mechanic in Echoes that is in previous Fire Emblem games is the triangle attack, really.
Well, so Radiant Dawn and Path of Radiance had that weird function on Tanith where you could summon 3 Pegasus Knights.
Right.
I
remember that.
And then there's the Thief Steal function, which is like an old one. I guess it's not really an art, but it's like one of those extra combat mechanics, we can say.
I remember
that's reaching.
I remember playing Sacred Stones, and Null could become a summoner class, and then he could summon these little tiny monsters.
See, those are more like class skills to me. I feel like what those became. The weapon arts and the in combat arts, they feel a lot like kind of like the activation skills, like a lethality or ether, but on demand for some sort of cost. In Echoes, it was to HP, but I think for this game, an MP bar would be perfectly reasonable. We notice in the trailer, and I was going to point this out, on Petra, she has 100% crit for an iron sword, and she's at level 2, and I don't know if that's just the values they cheated in the trailer to demonstrate the crit, but she has this
I think they just put that in for her to crit so that they could show it off. There's no way.
No, but there's like this weird Triforce symbol next to her name, and I don't think it's next to any of the other characters when they start.
No, there's a bunch of them that have that, actually. It's like the 3 arrows pointing up. Is that what you're referring to?
Yeah.
I think that's...
there's a lot of others
would be
that
like
have
their
it.
formation shape.
Yeah.
Wouldn't it?
Yeah.
Like that's the triangle formation, perhaps?
Perhaps.
There's definitely a few others that had that.
Do you think that's what the formations are going to be? Like they increase your crit rate, maybe?
Perhaps they could increase, like, if they were in different colors, like, they could definitely increase different stats. Like, the one we saw for Petra's is green, but I'll go over the trailer, and if there's, like, ones in, like, yellow or red, perhaps those represent different formations that boost different strats. That's completely feasible.
Huh. Well, with the in battle mechanics, I really hope that not in battle, on the map mechanics, I really hope they let us adjust like the camera angles, because it's a little bit confusing with the whole 3D thing. I mean,
that did look kind of weird.
You can't always look at the map. I know there's a screenshot where you can kind of look at the map and just play it off the map, and just look back at the main gameplay after you're done moving your units, but I really hope that we can like set it into like a bird's eye view kind of thing, or maybe zoom out to make it look. What if they gave us the option to zoom out and like make it 8-bit? Like kind of with the 8-bit sprites or 16-bit sprites.
I think actually what would really help this game, in terms of just being clear as to where everything is the danger zone markers. That's like the purple thing that marks the enemy range, as well as Awakening, and I believe Fates and Echoes had this as well. You could adjust the thickness of the grid on the screen so that you could kind of see where the squares were and sort of pace yourself using those. And I feel like those would really help just orientate everything in the game.
That's true, yeah.
Yeah, those are nice quality
thoughts,
of life updates. I ain't got any problem with that. I mean, sounds like some pretty standard things. They don't harm, and they only benefit, so I'd love to have them. I'm not necessarily going to use them, but one of the things you guys were saying about like camera angles, though, that I noticed was like during the crits, the camera is panned in like a really weird way. And I don't know if that's like set in stone or not. It was like nice, but confusing to me as well.
I mean,
in a way where it's like, this is different.
In Awakening and Fates, we were able to change the camera angle of the battle scenes, I think.
Yeah.
Oh, one of the biggest changes that we haven't covered yet in the battles is like, what do you think of the whole Langrisser type of thing? Like, we have like units behind us. Like every unit has like a sub army of units.
I feel like that ties into the formation mechanic more than anything else. And
yeah, I don't like if you look at let's see. There's a screenshot where it shows like what's it called? The damage forecast, or what do you call it? The battle forecast? Is that what it's called?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like it didn't really change anything much. Like you don't see kind of what Langrisser does, which I was kind of afraid of. Like I really was not into the idea of them, doing the Langrisser thing.
And I think with the units on the battlefield, like I think it's really just an aesthetic choice, and when it does factor into gameplay, it'll be for very specific things. We saw a little bit of this in Fates, like the Crux of Fate chapter or whatever, where you choose which faction you go to. That one had a bunch of units sort of in the background to look like there was a larger army marching across the battlefield. So it's something that they've been playing with in the last few games, and I think this is really the culmination of it.
I mean, maybe they're trying to patch up the idea that, oh, we beat a whole army with just a small group of teenagers. So maybe that's why.
Yeah, I guess. And I think that's a really good segue into when it is beating up an army with a small group of young adults / teenagers. Do we think casual mode and Phoenix mode will be coming back?
Oh, I really hope not. I mean, casual mode is cool, but Phoenix mode is a little pushing it too far, Like, as a person who's played not too many Fire Emblems, but I've played a few of the old ones and Fates and Awakening, I always played on Classic Hard, And I didn't see the fun in playing casual and Phoenix unless you just wanted to skip just for the story. But again, like the whole thing that made Conquest, and like everyone says that the whole thing that made Fates bearable was the gameplay was actually good. So like why would you skip the gameplay by playing Phoenix mode and casual mode? I mean, to each his own, but like that's just my take on it.
See, in my opinion, the biggest offense Fates casual mode made was the chapter didn't immediately end if you lost Corrin.
Yeah, that's another one.
Yeah, like
I think your lord should always be an end of the line thing.
Yeah, in Awakening it was like that, and it was perfectly fine. Like Awakening, there was still some challenge, even if you played on casual mode, because you want Chrom and Robin on every map, because you have to bring Chrom, and Robin's more or less your best unit after Frederick for the early game, and then pretty much your best unit once you kind of outgrow Frederick.
Well, what about you guys? Do you guys like soft reset if ever you lose a unit?
I personally, yes, I do, but I usually since I play on the Virtual Console primarily, or I play Echoes. Those are just the Fire Emblem games I find myself going back to more often than not. I will save state, and I will only go back a few turns. Like, I won't restart the entire map. And I think that's what Milla's turn wheel was really great at. A lot of people say it harms gameplay because it makes things too easy. But I think just the convenience of a feature like that. And we see that sort of time reversal in the trailer, so I expect that a Milla's turn wheel-like effect will also return as well, because we do see something similar to it in the trailer.
All right, time for me to give a healthy dose of elitism. No, I'm just kidding.
I mean, I'll admit that, like, even when I played Sacred Stones and Shadow Dragon, like, I would soft reset whenever someone died, but, like, for a game like Conquest, like, everyone said it was the hardest Fates game, and yes, if you didn't buy the DLC, and, like, the DLC wasn't even available when I first got the game, and so I played Conquest. You know, grinding was almost impossible because you had to only grind on the story maps. There was no extra maps that you can grind on. So you had to, kind of like the old Fire Emblem games where you have to allocate the EXP carefully so that, you know, your units are strong enough, but like you don't have one super strong unit and the rest of your army is trash. Because I did encounter a map, mainly everyone's most hated map was I think it was Chapter 21, the one where you had to defend. It was against Takumi, I think. And you had to defend a port against so many Hoshidan soldiers, and it was insane. Like, I believe I soft resetted like 3 times, but at the very end, like, I lost Silas, and I was just, you know, I can't do this anymore. So I just lost Silas for the rest of the game, you know, the playthrough. So I do like the, you know, the whole risk reward thing, because like I think Phoenix mode is a little too much.
I will definitely agree with you there.
Because like they revive at the they revive at the beginning of every single turn, and I don't see the fun in that.
Yeah, no, casual mode it's good, and I'm glad it's there for people who want it. And I think that there are ways to make casual mode still have reasonable difficulty. I think Awakening is still the best version of casual mode we've had. So I feel like it should stay, but I feel like the game should encourage you to play Classic a bit more. Like perhaps if you want to go hard or lunatic, you have to play on Classic or something like that. Like I think that would be a really cool stipulation that I hope they implement.
I can agree with that. I really want to see people become good Fire Emblem players. Like, that is something I want to see. I want to see... It's a strategy role-playing game. I get it. RPG is great. You want to be connected with your characters. That's great. You want to experience the story. That's great. But we also forget the whole strategy element, and the easier we make it, the less strategy there is. Albeit, sure, everyone can make what they will of the game and do challenge runs or play Classic, or you can do your own thing. But I feel like it's such an integral point to Fire Emblem to be able to strategize and play well. And I think everyone needs to experience that. And so the punishing aspect of the game, while things like Thracia 776 are like extremely punishing, maybe we don't want to go that far. Maybe we want to give, you know, people a little bit of a sprinkle of a less difficult, less punishing mode. But you gotta strike that fine balance. You gotta... I really just want to see people get good at the game. You know?
Well, yeah, I agree with you. And, like, I remember watching a YouTube video not too long ago, or actually quite a long time ago, but still. Regardless, anyway, the whole video was about, like, I believe it was video games that made fun of you if you chose the easiest difficulty. And basically, like, your character was branded with, like, some kind of icon or some, like, little, like, I remember one game was, like, a shooting game or something, and then your character had to, like, suck on a binky for the whole game, or something like that. Like, I mean, for, like, the casual players, you know, it shouldn't matter. Like, they're just playing the game, it's cool. Like, I'm cool with having a little flower on my head or something. But then for the, you know, the players who actually care to, you know, about showing off that... I remember in Fates, like, some people like to show off that they beat, like, Lunatic and stuff like that. Like, I don't know if they cheated or not, but a lot of people showed off that they beat Lunatic on Lunatic Classic, and, you know, it's kind of more like a recognition kind of thing.
Yeah.
But I get where Link is coming from, where, like, we just want everyone to experience what Fire Emblem is supposed to be. I mean... See, that's where the whole elitist concept comes from. Like, what is Fire Emblem supposed to be? But, you know, it is a strategy game. That's
the thing, though, with Fire Emblem is even though the permadeath seems daunting, almost every Fire Emblem game I've played, barring one or two exceptions, has had a really fair difficulty curve, in my opinion. I feel like there are games that ease you in a little too much. Like I feel a Fire Emblem 7, especially Lynn's campaign being forced and having all those tutorial blurbs it feels a little oppressive, and it's just...
See, I'll hard disagree on that one, because imagine you're playing Fire Emblem for the first time and you have no idea what the hell it is.
Well, yeah.
I think their Lynn's mode is perfectly fine.
Oh, yes. But on replete...
And that's what it was designed for, because that's when it came to the West.
Yes. But on repeat playthroughs, if you don't play on hard, which hard difficulty Lynn's mode, actually, fun fact, it actually removes all the tutorials. So if you want to still go through Lynn's mode and get some extra levels for Hector hard mode, play Lynn's mode on hard mode. You can
also transition to Hector normal mode or Eliwood normal mode from Lynn's hard mode. So it's not like you're locked in hard mode if you start Lynn's hard mode.
Yeah,
and it's also not that difficult, so there's no reason not to do it.
Exactly. But regardless, I feel like every Fire Emblem game except for Radiant Dawn and Fire Emblem 4, I got a little bit of it, but not as bad as Radiant Dawn, had a really...
Radiant Dawn is BS.
Had a really, really fair difficulty curve starting out. And it felt like you actively had to try or just get really, really unlucky to lose a unit in the first 5 or so chapters. Like after chapter 6, I feel like is when losing a unit is reasonably realistic in most Fire Emblem games. But for the first 5 or so chapters in most Fire Emblem games, I feel reasonably comfortable that I won't lose a character. And I think that permadeath is so daunting as a concept that people don't realize that the game still has a difficulty curve to ease you into that. And if you're doing everything right, or at least you understand what's going on in the game, you should be fine. And by the time you get to chapter 6 and when unit loss is a legitimate thing, you should know to not put your Pegasus Knights in the range of archers or some other thing like that. So by then, I think when permadeath actually becomes a threat, you have enough a knowledge base as a player to deal with it.
That's true. Yeah. See, I remember there was a map in Awakening where I think a few newbies would, have a hard time with. It was one of the first maps where you have a Pegasus Knight, but then you're supposed to rescue this mage, which is separated from all of your units by this huge mountain slope. And he's in range of like a few, I think Wyvern Riders or Draco Knights or whatever they're called in Awakening. And as a new player, you don't know about the rescue function. Like I don't think it actually taught you how to rescue units, and or pairing. In Awakening, it was. So, like I could see that new players could easily get that mage killed, or if they don't know what they're doing.
I think this is a chapter where you get Rickon, right?
Yeah, that's. I didn't want to do spoilers or anything. I wasn't sure if
No, it's early enough in the game, and he wears blue.
Well, yeah. So yeah, if you don't know that Pegasi can fly over mountains, you probably wouldn't know how to get Rickon out of that situation. And that's the thing. Like with softer setting and stuff like that, you'll learn from the experience of it. But I think casual mode, like it won't teach you. Like you'll lose the unit and then you won't learn from it.
Yeah.
At least with software setting, you really want to save that unit, and you'll learn how to save that unit by testing your options, trial and error, and that sort of thing.
And I think this is a really important conversation to have regarding Three Houses, because the Switch is such a huge user base that we are going to see a huge onset of new players to this game. Because similar to the onset of new players that we got with Awakening, I think, because the Switch is such a huge platform and such a huge player base, we will see that large influx of new players who are going to make those mistakes and who are going to go through what we just talked about over the last little while. But of course, they won't go through that without seeing the game itself, so I think we should move on to visuals. I am killing it with these segues.
Well, the visuals are okay. A lot of people still complain about the cutscene visuals. I mean, a few of them are good here and there, but then a few of them kind of remind me of Fates was okay. The voice acting in Fates was kind of though. Valentia's cutscenes, the voice acting was great, but a lot of people complained about the visuals in the Valentian cutscenes, the Echoes cutscenes.
Well,
and it seems like that's what they're gonna have in Three Houses.
Well, we have the same studio doing the cutscenes for Three Houses as we got for Valentia. Because in Awakening and Fates, we had Studio Anima, who did these beautiful 3D cutscenes that were excellent. But the thing was, it's very clear that they were reasonably expensive because we didn't actually have very many of them throughout each of the Fates paths. And in Awakening, I think Awakening only had maybe 12 cutscenes total that were front-loaded.
They were so good, though.
Yeah, and they were also front-loaded and end-loaded. Like, we had... Most of them were either at the front end or the back end of the story. I don't think there was a single 3D cutscene during the Valm arc, actually.
No, there wasn't.
Somebody could correct me if I'm wrong, but I don't remember one. And
yeah, I don't think there was one.
But with Echoes and Studio Kara, there's a lot of frame jumping. Like, the animations, they feel like they don't feel nowhere near as fluid, I think. Style, and a lot of people really seem to not like that. It gets compared a lot to the Berserk 2016 anime, and I really hate that comparison because one thing you gotta understand with the Berserk 2016 anime is the bad CG is like a third of that show's problems. That show has awful color composition and shot composition as well. Kara only has not fluid animation. They actually know how to frame a shot and how to make it look nice with colors. So there you go. But
who did the cutscenes for Radiant Dawn and Path of Radiance?
I'm not sure, actually.
Knows.
I'm not sure, actually. I'd have to look into that.
I kind of surround them all.
I kind of like their cutscenes. I mean, their voice acting was something else, but their cutscenes were pretty smooth for the time.
The Tellius
interesting maneuver.
The Tellius dub is,
of course,
just wow. Soren, always stuck in your books.
Always lost in your books.
Oh gosh, Mia, I remember seeing that cutscene. But yeah. What do you think? We haven't seen too many like voice acted cutscenes, have we? For the trailer.
For the trailer, no. I
don't think we've seen any.
Well, we got kind of one towards the end where we heard Edelgard, voiced by Christina V, say move forward, and then a bunch of guys move forward, and then we hear either Claude or Dimitri, I don't know which, say over here, and then it panned towards them, and I think that's
that was at the very end,
and I think that's the extent of the voice acting and cutscenes we've seen thus far. Link, you got any thoughts on presentation thus far?
So I'm a very big stickler for like in-combat animations, as being someone who absolutely adores the Game Boy Advance animations to death. Like, one of my favorites, and I've said this a billion times, so anyone who knows me knows this, but that cheeky-ass mercenary crit animation where he wags his sword as if he's going, no, 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 and then he throws it and he kills you. Why can we not have things like that anymore?
I mean, you're right, but you got to take into account, like, it was obviously so much easier to put them on those little sprites. I mean, yeah, Nintendo does have the money to put in, the work for animations like that, but I don't know.
My personal favorite GBA crit will always be the Nomadic Trooper sword critical, where he like jumps 600 feet in the air, comes down, goes under his horse, and then resets position. It's like, that is just the greatest thing. I love that so much.
I mean, my favorite would have to be the generals, the ones where they have the little chain on their weapons. That was so cool.
And that's whack.
And then if they're wielding a sword, they spin it around, which is insane.
And the coolest detail about the generals is, like, I think Ameli's Heroes artwork has, like, the chain in it as well, too. So, like...
Oh, yeah.
They just straight up reference it. It's awesome. But I'm okay with the in-battle visuals. Like, to me, Fire Emblem has... 3D animated Fire Emblem with 3D models has always looked kind of jank to me. Like, it's fine, but the crits never feel as punchy as they did in the GBA. There are a couple of exceptions, of course, like the Dragon Fang proc in Fates was like on par with GBA crits, and the Dreadfighter crit in Echoes I think are the closest we've come to recapturing that magic.
Yeah, I think that's fair. I mean, I that's all I've got in terms of animations, to be honest, and like visuals. I'm not a very visual person in general.
But yeah,
like I'm not very in-depth, detail-oriented. So to me, that's like one of the things that sticks out. That was like one of my favorite things ever about Fire Emblem was like the crit animations and how flourishy they could have been. And in this one, it was kind of like just a jump and a slash. And I was like, really? That's it, Petra? Like that's all you got?
That's true. I remember like in the first trailer, our main character actually gets a crit. Byleth gets a crit, and then all he does is jump up just a few feet, and then he just strikes down, and that's it.
Yeah,
nothing too flashy.
Yeah.
Like I respect Fates for when the DLC classes came out and you could recruit Ike and everything. Ike at least kept his Rognal animations.
Yeah, that was awesome. I think that about does it for visuals. Anybody else have anything to weigh in on, or?
I mean, does anyone want to address that it looks like, Persona? Like,
what
else?
I kind of already brought that up. I was like, Hogwarts meets Persona.
Well,
you're right. You're totally right. And I think it's actually a smart thing to do, because they're playing on the popularity of Persona by somewhat making designs. So people are going to be like, hey, this looks like Persona. Let's buy the game.
Well, but does that affect your view on, like, how we keep comparing it to like older Fire Emblems? Does the art style conflict with how you guys view it? I remember.
I don't know if it bothers me.
The art.
I don't think it does.
I've warmed to the art style personally. At first, the look of the character's eyes was a little off to me, but I've warmed to it ever since. I'm also glad that the outfits and everything are look realistic for the time. Like, we don't have these wacky, crazy anime fantasy outfits that we had in Fates. It feels like the outfits in this game feel like a really nice middle ground between Hidari's super reserved period kind of looking outfits that we got in Echoes, and then the more unique and colorful outfits we had in Awakening. And I feel like this game has hit a really nice middle ground there. I really love the color palette, and I've warmed to the art and facial style. So I actually quite like the key art, even if it does resemble Persona 4 and Persona 5's art style quite a lot.
Yeah, I agree. I don't mind it too much. One last thing that I want to touch upon before you move on to the next topic is for voice acting. Like, what do you think? Do you think it's going to be fully voiced in like not like the cutscene wise, but like story dialogue wise, like text wise? Do you think it's going to be fully voiced, or do you think they're going to take like an Awakening route where they have a few like yeah and stuff like that here and there, or because that's one thing people complained about Fates is that it wasn't voiced at all when you had dialogue between characters, the text dialogue. I mean,
I feel like this game will have. I feel like most of the story and chapter dialogue will all be voiced, but I think a lot of the side dialogue, like the dialogue in the school and dialogue in support conversations, which are likely making a return, will be sort of the Awakening, like, yeah and okay kind of style of, like, interspersed a couple phrases here or there.
Yeah, I really hope so. I really did like how Awakening did that part.
Yeah. But I think the chapters and the cutscenes and everything like that, like everything important to the story, and like most of the Gaiden chapters as well, I think those will all be fully voiced. So I think that about does it for that. So I think for before we go into our general thoughts on the game, we're going to do a bit of a rapid fire on some of our favorite characters that we are excited to meet and use. So let's start out with your favorite of the three lords and why. Link, you can do the honors first.
See, I'm kind of mixed. So let me talk about the one I don't like, and I think it's purely an aesthetic perspective. But Dimitri just looks wonky, like whack as hell. That hairstyle is weird.
I've heard it compared to ramen or the cheese half melted on a Philly cheesesteak.
It just looks, man, like weird. But I don't know. Of the main lords, Edelgard is like gonna be everyone's favorite, so I feel like I don't want to pick that just because of that. And Claude looks like he could be interesting. So I don't know. It might come down to a coin flip, or whoever has Petra on their team would probably be my favorite out of those two.
Oh yeah,
that's
I believe
honestly,
it's Edelgard. I believe it's Edelgard. Who
then
has
yeah,
Petra.
then we going with Edelgard.
Dude, the second you said whoever has Petra, like I sold. We are like, dude, we are brothers in arms on this. What have we taken away from the discussion? We said a lot about casual mode versus classic mode, and we determined that that Petra is great. Good talk. Otaks, what about you?
Honestly, I feel that I'm gonna go the Claude route. Claude, right?
We Final Fantasy VII now, boys.
But yeah. Oh gosh. But yeah, I really do like how Claude looks. Actually, he looks pretty damn cool. And yeah, like LinkKing kind of brought up, I think everyone's gonna pick Edelgard, especially since I guess Petra's really popular, I guess. But I'm excited because I think Claude has both Bernadetta and Leonie. I think her name is Leonie, the one with the short orange hair. And I also think he has Raphael, which is the guy I have in my profile picture.
Oh
right
yes,
now.
Raphael is okay. Raphael is so based. Like seriously, guys, he is like Ipe Arden levels of raw energy.
But is he strong and is he tough though?
I hope. We better not call him
That shirt is going to explode. Did you see his shirt? Like they went through the trouble to make it look like it's tearing apart.
I mean, people were saying that like his weapon was like his button, and like his button just pops off and hits people like.
He's a ranged unit.
Like it goes at bullet speed, just like.
He just flexes. Oh god. But yeah, I really like I really like the designs of these characters. The only one I have to nitpick is Linhardt. Like, what exactly is that? Like the hairstyle and everything.
Otaks, you are a memer. I am disappointed that you did not get that reference.
No, I get it, but it's just like, is it for real? Like that's what I say whenever like I do unit reviews in Fire Emblem Heroes. It's like, are you trolling me or is this like for real?
See, the thing I hate about Linhardt though is it's a green-haired. I'm not sure what gender it is yet, but it's a green-haired something or other wearing like a gothic outfit, and it's like. The problem I have is that is exactly what I imagined a fusion between Lyn and Reinhardt would look like. And it's like, that just upsets me.
That's the funniest thing, though, Zerk, because I remember we were having a conversation where we were discussing kind of like who Lyn should have been paired up with. Like, you were like saying you didn't really like the Lyn X Hector thing, and you preferred Lyn X Wrath, and you gave your little spiel about it, and and I took my opinions, and we, had a good time talking about it. And then, Chaz interrupted, saying that
when does
Lyn
Chaz not interrupt?
That Lyn, I know, but he said like Lyn X the planes is a thing. But now we know exactly who Lyn marries.
Yeah, it's Reinhardt.
That's the Reinhardt.
Yep, the Reinhardt. I got to go back and replay Fire Emblem 7 and really dig deep and see where he is, because I'm sure there's got to be something there.
Yeah, it's got to be a far more compelling support than I ever realized. Just.
Yeah, Reinhardt actually didn't die. He had kind of like a Camus situation.
Oh yes, he washed up on Alib instead of Valentia.
Makes sense. There we go. Now we got it.
All right. In terms of side characters, you were gonna probably move on to that next. So, like, in terms of side characters,
I haven't actually said my lord yet.
Oh yeah, Zerk, go ahead. My bad.
I'm in it for Petra, so I'm of course gonna pick Edelgard first. But it looks like I'm gonna do multiple playthroughs of this game, obviously. So I'm probably gonna pick Edelgard first. But honestly, I'm gonna be the contrarian here, and I'm gonna say Dimitri actually is my favorite of the three. just because I feel like Dimitri is going to be this game's Eliwood. And Edelgard is already, like, she's the super popular new waifu character. Everybody loves her. And then Claude is just, he looks like this suave Casanova. He's also, like, our first non-Caucasian Fire Emblem protagonist, which is awesome. Like, actually, like, awesome.
That reminds me of...
Nice PC description.
I remember watching Skyde's reaction video to Three Houses. And,
oh, yes, he's like,
he
can
saw
I
the
be
MC.
black?
Yeah,
Oh,
he was like,
so
but can
good.
I be black, though?
Yeah, that was so good. That was so good.
Oh my gosh.
But yes,
Gotta love Skydes.
and not to mention Claude's key art is my favorite of like, he just looks so suave. His key art just tells you so much about what that character is about. I feel like he's going to be a big fan favorite as well. And then Dimitri, of course, good old cheesesteak. I feel like he's gonna get slept on, and even though he might have, like, actually some really good characterization, and that's why I really equate him to Eliwood, because Hector is everyone's favorite, because Hector, he's the personification of beef. He's awesome. He's also really well written if you dig into him. And then Lyn is, of course, well, if you're on this channel, you know my opinions of Lyn. And Eliwood is just like, hi, I'm here. This is actually my game. I am the protagonist, but nobody loves me. Except Ninian.
Ripped.
It's because all he does is cry.
And I want Dimitri to be loved, so I'm cheering for you, Dimitri. So moving on to side characters, who I know Link and I are both like, we're Team Petra.
Gosh.
Team Petra all the way. Seriously, that pencil skirt though, like, actually, and then, like, the under eye tattoo, God, she's so good. She's so good.
I mean, I suppose so.
She's just smoking, bro. Like, there's no way you can't say yes. Like,
I mean,
take me out to a date on Valentine's Day. I'm down, bro.
she's not really my type, if you get my drift.
Fair enough.
If you know
fair
who,
enough.
yeah,
I
if
mean,
you know me.
I remember what your display name on Discord was a few days ago, Otaks. But we'll keep that on the down low.
Oh my gosh.
Besides Petra, though, I'm actually rather intrigued by Mercedes. Actually, she's on the blue team, and what little we've seen of her key art looks really cool. She was also in the first trailer. I'm curious to see what she's about. That and the tall dude with kind of the orange hair, he looks like he might be really interesting as well. Those are kind of my three that I'm looking at right now, and I'm thinking, yeah, I might like those characters. You, Link?
So, I gotta be honest, I haven't really looked at them too much in depth, but there was that one guy with the hair covering over his eye who, like, looked kind of edgy. I can't remember. I'm sure you know what he like.
Yeah,
he was kind of in the background.
yeah,
I was like, this guy looks like he looks like edgy Carol. That's who he looks like. That's what it reminds me of. And I was kind of
Carol
like, this guy
isn't
looks
edgy?
interesting. Edgier Carol.
Okay, there you go.
I can't remember what his name was though. He looked pretty cool.
I'll put it up on screen once I'm editing this.
I don't think he has a name.
Sure.
I don't think he was introduced. Like, I have the thing on the screen and it just says his name is Gothman.
Okay.
Question mark, Gothman.
I see.
Fair enough.
And you, Otaks, who are you kind of interested in?
I mean, I know, as far as, like, the most popular ones, it's probably Petra and Dorothea.
Oh, she's the one with the Jotaro hat,
With the
right?
hat.
Yeah.
But I'm honestly rooting for Bernadetta, who, actually, now that I'm checking, she's actually on Team Edelgard, and that might sway my decision a little bit. But
Oh.
aside from Bernadetta, maybe Leonie and Raphael, who are in Golden Deer, so I might stay with, Golden Deer.
So what have we learned today? Well, we've learned that Edelgard's path has the best girls. So if you want to go for the harem ending, go Edelgard's path. Claude's path is obviously Claude is based, and Claude is excellent.
That's the bro path.
Yeah, that is the homie's path. And then if you want to like live your life and just be a contrarian and choose the boring one, go Blue Eagles. Also, they have Mercedes, which means they probably hate BMWs. So if you like BMWs, don't choose the Blue Eagle. This is. I think we should get close to wrapping this up. So I think we should just.
Well, let's discuss like how your playthrough is gonna go. What's your plan for the playthrough? Your first playthrough.
Okay, that's actually interesting. I think I'm gonna first playthrough. I'm going to probably stick to whatever unit archetypes each of the characters are leaning into. If we do get as much customizability as I think we will, and I'll just play like the most vanilla playthrough possible on Edelgard's route, and that'll just be my first one. My second playthrough, once I know the mechanics a bit more, I'll go Dimitri and I'll just play with it. And then on my third playthrough, when I go Claude, I'm just gonna go completely whack. Like it's like this character is meant to be a lancer. No, thank you. You will be in fact an archer, and you will ride a Pegasus. Thank you very much. How was your day?
What about you,
Alright,
LinkKing?
interesting. So I usually play Fire Emblem in like a very traditional way. So I go classic hard, and then just kind of like Zerk said, extremely vanilla, like normal. You stick to whatever each unit seems like they're supposed to be. And then I'll do classic lunatic. I'll probably take a different path, so I won't pick Edelgard. Maybe I'll go with Claude. And I might change a few things around here or there. And then for my third playthrough, I'll definitely go Dimitri because that's the one left. And I'll just go all balls to the wall, changing everything. I don't know if I'll do it on lunatic. Maybe I'll chill and do it on easy and just experiment as much as possible. And then kind of explore the realms and like test the depths of what each unit can do. And then once I get to my fourth run, I start doing challenge runs.
And then you, Otaks. Well, actually, I made a bet with my fan base, and I said, I made a bet, and I said if I lose that bet, I will kill off every single character except for Byleth, and I will try to clear the whole game with only the main character. With only Byleth.
Oh,
so that's gonna be my first playthrough. And then after that, I'll probably, play the game seriously, like how I'm supposed to, quote unquote supposed to. And then for my third save file, that's gonna be like the waifu save file that I'm gonna probably use if they ever add PvP. I'm gonna, build my units there. So yeah.
All right. To end off this rather lengthy and decently unfocused discussion, I think we should each kind of go over just what our general thoughts and optimisms are. You don't have to give a rating. In fact, if we all use different rating scales, I think that'd be way better. But regardless, I think we should just go over whether we're optimistic or pessimistic and kind of just our general overall thoughts just to close this thing out. So I'll have Link start it out again.
Cool. Okay, so I guess I'll just go ahead and say right out the bat, I already ordered the special edition, pre-ordered it, Best Buy, right next to my house.
What a guy.
Wow, flex.
I've got it. I paid for it like half an hour after the direct. I'm all in. It's
flexing.
It's
on
Fire
us
Emblem
already.
is my favorite series. I don't give a crap. I'm getting the game. I'm on board.
Flexing. But flexing already.
Hey man, it's tax return season. What can we say? But real talk. I don't think we've seen quite enough to really give a judgment on the game. From what I've seen so far, there's definitely positives. There's definitely a few things that, I scratch my head at. But overall, it's Fire Emblem. I'm gonna like the game no matter what. I mean, one thing that I love to say is like we like to hate on Fire Emblem for certain things and we like to nitpick, but at the end of the day, it's usually, but the scale goes from I love this to I kind of like this. I don't have anything lower than that. So I'm going to like it. It's going to be Fire Emblem. It's going to be great. It's going to be cool. And I'm on board. I'm excited.
All right. Awesome. Otaks, how about you?
I mean, my standpoint is kind of the same as LinkKing's, where I'm excited as well. You know, like I definitely think that it's going to be a lot different from what we're used to. But that's kind of the fun of it. Like that's kind of the it adds to the excitement because we don't know how it's going to be executed. Hopefully, it's going to be like well executed to the point that we can enjoy the game. You know, as Fire Emblem fans all together, you know, everyone can just enjoy the game for what it is. But you know, I'm personally excited. I'm really glad that, you know, this series is still going strong, and you know, I really hope that they have more installments in the future. And we got to remember the most important question: can we marry the students though?
Got it bad, got it bad, got it bad.
All right, and then now it's your turn, Zerk.
I'm cautiously optimistic personally. I'm not the biggest fan of the plot hook and the setting thus far. I think there's definitely a lot of potential that they could use for it. I'm one more long trailer away from being like, I'm really into this, or maybe it's not for me. I'm still, of course, going to pick it up. I feel like I'm obligated to just given the fact that I run a YouTube channel about Fire Emblem. But I am cautiously optimistic. I may have wanted something a lot more traditional, or something more akin to Radiant Dawn, or in my case, Fire Emblem 7 or Fire Emblem 8. But I think what we're getting has a lot of love and passion behind it, and I'm really excited to see what game they've made. So
yeah, that's true.
That's really my sort of thoughts on this.
Yeah, that's true. I really would like this game to be the one that brings everyone together. Like, I really hope that, you know, everyone can just enjoy the game for what it is.
Well, keep dreaming, pal.
I mean, yeah, I kind of made that joke. Like, this is kind of like where the Old Testament of Fire Emblem games ends, and the New Testament begins. We're gonna get a lot of new stuff that some people might not accept, but hopefully, you know, we just got to stay optimistic and see how things go from here.
Yeah, yeah, for sure. I think that about does it for our little discussion here. So once again, I will let you two plug yourself, just to remind you guys, just to remind everybody watching where you can find you two. So Link, where can they find you?
LinkKing7, YouTube, Arvis Stuff, Fire, Burning Desire.
And Otaks?
Well, yeah. First, I just want to thank you, Zerk, for hosting, and you know, it was a really fun experience, fun talking with you guys. My name is SDKingOtaks on YouTube. I do fake content. I was a little awkward in the beginning. I apologize for that. I'm a little sick, but yeah. Overall, this was actually really, really fun, and I enjoyed talking with the both of you on, you know, being excited as Fire Emblem fans.
Yeah. I think, yeah. I will have links to both LinkKing and Otaks in the description to both their channels and their social medias, whichever ones they have. And as one final thing to pose to both my guests and the listeners, Fire Emblem Three Houses comes out July 26th. That is the heat of summer. Do you guys think, and I know as Heroes YouTubers, you might be sick of this, do you guys think that one of our first Three Houses banners in Heroes will be Edelgard, Clara, and Dimitri in swimsuits?
I heard that Three Heroes slip. You're not letting that get by. No editing that out.
Nope, no, not at this point, no.
But to answer your question, yes, absolutely, 100%.
All right.
Yeah, I also believe that, you know, in order to promote the game even further and, you know, reach out to the Heroes community, they definitely should have a Three Houses banner before the game's release.
Yes, but Eldegard did
hopefully nothing too revealing, like, you know, how they did with Zelgius.
I mean, actually, you know what? I wouldn't complain about a Three Houses summer banner, because that means Petra might be on it, and...
what about Sothis?
Oh, God. Okay, we're ending it here.
Time to end it.
I'm hitting the eject button.
Catch y'all on the slip fight, then.
Thank you to my guests for coming. Thank you to you all for listening. And as always, no matter what games you like to play, happy hunting. My name is ZerkMonsterHunter 4. I will catch you on the flip side.